Picture this. You're marching into a damp, suffocatingly dark forest, and right there in the mist, you stumble upon the unburied bones of 20,000 of your brothers in arms. That was the grim, horrifying reality of the Teutoburg Forest. 3 entire Roman legions, just completely wiped off the map. Rome's pride was absolutely shattered. And Rome, well, Rome wanted blood. So today, we're unpacking the intensely personal, totally ruthless military campaigns of Rome's rising star, Germanicus. His one and only mission? To hunt down Rome's greatest enemy, Arminius, the very architect of that slaughter.
But here's the thing, before Germanicus could even strike, he was staring down a massive crisis. The year is 14 CE. The legendary Emperor Augustus is dead, and the Roman legions stationed on the Rhine frontier are furious. They're in full-blown mutiny against the new emperor, Tiberius. So how on earth do you distract a massive, heavily armed force that is literally capable of starting a civil war? Well, you take all that explosive, pent-up ferocity, and you point it dead at the enemy. Germanicus essentially hijacked the mutiny, marching his rebellious men straight into the terrifying, uncharted woods of Germania.
50. Think about that number for a second. 50 miles. That is how much earth Germanicus ordered completely scorched to the ground. He didn't just want to defeat these tribes in battle, he wanted to send a terrifying, unforgettable message. Catching the Marzi tribe completely off guard and intoxicated during an autumn feast, Germanicus's men just slaughtered everyone in their path. They created a 50-mile swath of total devastation. It was a brazen, incredibly brutal display of Roman retaliation. Okay, so those days of cautious border duty, yeah, those were dead and gone. Through 14 and 15 CE, Germanicus completely abandoned the old playbook, launching the series of hyper-aggressive lightning raids. He brilliantly exploited a bitter feud between Arminius and his own father-in-law, a guy named Sigistus. And by May, Germanicus hadn't just razed tribal capitals to the dirt, he captured an unbelievable prize. He actually captured Arminius's wife, Thusnelda, who was pregnant with Arminius's child at the time. The psychological blow here was just immense. But Arminius wasn't exactly the type to just roll over and give up. While Germanicus was moving troops up the coast by sea, his commander, Caecina, was forced to march his veterans overland. Arminius knew this terrain like the back of his hand, and he deliberately lured Caecina right into the treacherous Long Bridges, this swampy, densely forested bog. Arminius literally redirected streams to flood the Roman camp. Heavy wagons started sinking into the mud. Pure fear paralyzed these once disciplined Romans as Arminius launched a devastating, chaotic ambush right out of the tree line. The whole situation spiraled into absolute chaos. Imagine this. It's the dead of night. You're in a flooded camp, and a loose horse suddenly causes mass panic. Soldiers actually thought the enemy had breached the perimeter, so they start rushing the gates, desperate to flee. Recognizing it was a false alarm, Commander Caecina does something incredible. He throws himself face down into the mud, directly in the gateway, screaming at his men that if they want to desert, they'll have to literally step over his dead body to do it. It was such a shocking move that it snapped the troops right back into discipline. The next morning, they fought their way out of that bog, surviving by the absolute skin of their teeth. After that near disaster, the campaign takes this deeply, deeply emotional turn. Germanicus actually arrives at the exact site of the Teutoburg Forest massacre. The unburied ghosts of the past were literally right in front of them. It was a profoundly chilling scene. The troops spent days just burying the bones of their comrades, with Germanicus himself stepping up to turn the first sod of earth. And during these massive sweeping maneuvers, they actually managed to recover the sacred eagle standard of the lost 19th Legion. You can imagine, the morale boost was absolutely electric. It felt like they were finally righting the wrongs of the past. But marching overland was still bleeding Roman supply lines completely dry. So in the winter of 15 CE, Germanicus pulls off what I can only call a logistical miracle: 1,000 ships. Just think about the scale of that for a second. This was no longer just a large raiding party. This was an unprecedented amphibious assault, specifically designed to completely bypass those deadly forests and drop 3 full Roman legions deep into enemy territory, right at the mouth of the Ems River. By the way, if you love seeing how history's greatest generals solved impossible logistical nightmares like this, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss our next explainer. So this massive feat of engineering pushes the Romans rapidly toward the ultimate climax of the war, the plain of Idis to Viso. Arminius was there waiting for them, and he attempted to pull off a very familiar trick, luring the Romans into a complex river trap. But Germanicus had learned the hard lessons of the past. Unlike his predecessor Varus, Germanicus utilized vastly superior scouting. Local defectors actually pinpointed Arminius's exact position in the woods. The trap was completely foiled, and for the first time, these two great, battle-hardened armies finally faced off on open ground. As the Germanic main body roared forward and charged, Germanicus kept his cool. He ordered his elite cavalry to sweep wide around the edges and outflank them. The timing was absolutely flawless. The Germanic front line shattered under the pressure, retreating in a panic directly into their own reserves who were just rushing out of the forest. It became a chaotic slaughter. Watching his carefully built army disintegrate before his eyes, Arminius was forced into a desperate retreat. To avoid being captured or recognized, he literally smeared his own face with mud and blood, slipping away like a ghost into the chaos. But Arminius, you gotta hand it to him, the guy was incredibly resilient. Rousing his few remaining allies, he staged one final, absolutely desperate stand. Knowing for a fact he couldn't beat the Romans on an open plain, he tried to recreate the magic of his original Teutoburg victory. He chose this incredibly narrow choke point, squeezed tight between a treacherous swamp and a dense forest, and he blocked the path with a massive earthen structure known as the Angevarian Wall. The plan was simple: pin the advancing Romans right against the embankment and slaughter them. Germanicus's scouts, however, spotted the massive earthwork instantly. There would be no surprise ambush today. Instead, Germanicus rolled out a clinical three-step counter-strategy. Step 1. A calculated forest advance to root out any hidden cavalry on the flanks. Step 2. He actually brought heavy siege engines directly into the field battle, mercilessly pelting the defenders on the wall with artillery to shatter their morale. Step 3. Right as the defenders began to waver, Germanicus unleashed his elite Praetorian cohorts. They smashed through the weakened lines, driving the warriors violently back into their own swamp trap. It was an absolute, undeniable Roman victory. At this point, the vengeance truly seemed complete. Arminius's grand coalition was utterly broken. Another lost eagle standard was proudly recovered, and the rebellious tribes were crushed. But history is rarely that clean. As the campaigning season closed, Germanicus sailed his massive fleet back home, only to be caught in devastating freak storms on the Wadden Sea. Ships were smashed to pieces, and thousands of victorious men were simply swept away into the dark water. Rome achieved its vengeance, yes, but at a horrifying, almost unbearable cost in blood and gold. Which actually brings us to the deep, tragic irony of this entire campaign. Germanicus won the war, he broke Arminius, and he avenged the restless ghosts of Teutoburg. But he suffered a massive political defeat back home. Emperor Tiberius was a cold pragmatist, and honestly, he was deeply, dangerously jealous of Germanicus' soaring popularity with the army and the public. Looking at the wrecked fleets, the endless casualties, and the staggering financial costs, Tiberius just pulled the plug. He flat out refused to give Germanicus one more year to permanently finish the job, recalling him to Rome. The very lands those Roman soldiers bled and died for were simply abandoned by imperial decree. And that leaves us with a really haunting question. Was all of that vengeance truly worth the cost? Tens of thousands of lives lost, entire fleets swallowed by the freezing sea, all to restore Roman honor, only for a jealous politician sitting comfortably in Rome to draw a line on a map and just walk away. It's a pretty profound look at the true grinding cost of empire. So, what do you think? Did Rome ultimately win, or did they lose far more than they gained? Let us know your thoughts down in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to keep exploring the incredible, complicated echoes of history with us.